I want to ask everybody a question, and please feel free to either PM me your response or leave a comment in the comment section. I'm really interested in hearing what your response to this question would be. If your physical self is the one creating thought, who or what is hearing these thoughts? Like I said, feel free to either leave a comment or PM me in my message box. I've asked a few friends this question and I've gotten varying responses, but I am very curious to hear what people outside my social circle has to say. If you haven't figured it out by now, yeah, I'm obviously a weirdo. And the Shadow Priest class is an accurate representation of how I relate to many things in real life. Doesn't make any sense? I bet you'd be surprised if you took a look and made the comparison. Now, what I'm about to say is completely based on opinion and is in no way absolute information. For brevity's sake, I'm going to touch upon the 4 archetypes and what similarities I have found in people who play each class. The first class I'd like to talk about is the tank. Now, this goes without saying, but someone who rolls a tank rolls one with the knowledge that they will be in the spotlight. I have found most players who main tank classes are either extremely self-centered, superstars, quote unquote, or someone who finds great joy in being the proverbial anchor both in-game and in real life. People always talk about DPS having EPs the size of Uranus, which in many times might be true, but many tanks, due to the nature of their role, have an overinflated ego. On the other hand, I have ran into quite a few tanks who clearly were better players than I, yet still kept their egos in check. These players are usually ones with good jobs and solid support structure outside of WoW. They have reached a certain level of comfort in real life and are not in a constant state of trying to prove themselves to the world. The difference between these two types of people in a group is immense, and although the skill set may be the same, their attitudes make one much easier to play with than the other. Next up, we have the healer, the unsung hero of any raid or dungeon group. As a whole, I've found these players generally to be much more willing to sacrifice personal gain at the expense of group prosperity. Now, this might be due to the fact that a healing role needs to be filled by someone with a personality that doesn't really mind to be in the forefront of everything. Most healers I have found seem to be much better followers than leaders, and many people might hear that statement and carry some sort of negative connotation with that, but as I'm going to explain, that is absolutely not the case. In real life and in WoW, a great leader can be made to look even better when his followers not only follow the leader's instructions, but improvise effectively on the fly. For example, you're running a dungeon and a pack of mobs you're fighting require at least one of the mobs to be hard CC'd. Your tank marks, and your mage sheeps the humanoid spellcaster. A few seconds later, it breaks unexpectedly. A good follower would now shift his attention to the broken CC and make sure it gets applied. Now, this seems like common sense, but you'd be surprised how many groups I've been in where if the leader of the group were not giving play-by-play instructions on exactly what to do, things would go haywire, and pandemonium would occur. Furthermore, we have the DPS. These players will make up the bulk of the population, and most on a whole are average in both their character ability and in their real life situation. Now, of course, you're going to have a few people who pull away from the pack and truly shine, truly show how dedicated they are in their career in WoW, whatever it may be. But what I found as a whole is that someone who picks a DPS class is usually someone who finds great pleasure in blowing shit the fuck up. Now, in real life, their frustrations can be taken out by blowing up basically whatever is in front of them in the game. Some players prefer to kill with a long drawn-out death. Yes, I'm looking at you, Warlock players. While others like to do it from behind. The style in which your class does damage is a direct correlation to the attributes the player, has in real life. Someone who prefers a non-cookie cutter spec is usually more open-minded than someone who is a rigid follower of what the best specs would be. Some of these hybrids find great joy in being shrugged off as unoptimal, only to turn around and do their role extremely effectively. These people won't be afraid to blaze their own trail, regardless of what others are telling them. Last but not least, I want to touch upon the hybrids. Now, these players make up a very small percentage of the population and are generally looked down upon in-game as quote-unquote retards. In a nicer way of putting it, unoptimal. These hybrid players tend to keep quiet, but walk with a big-ass stick. You can consider many of these players trailblazers, both in real life and in-game. It takes a special sort of person to knowingly select a class or spec known to perform at a lower rate than others. Many hybrid mains find great pleasure in proving the naysayers wrong. When no one expects greatness from you, it is much easier to be great when everyone is expecting mediocrity. But hybrid players also must be cautious not to fall victim to why the very mediocrity he is trying to blaze past. If one is not willing to put the work and provide overwhelming evidence of their class mastery, you will fade into obscurity much easier than your counterpart, which can be directly correlated to in real life as well, because when you're trying out new routes or new modes of thinking in real life, you have to have overwhelming evidence to convince your peers who are stuck in this monolithic older way of thinking. Even if your way is better, you have to be on point, otherwise people aren't going to take you seriously. The thing is, a bad DPS can still bring mediocre DPS, but a bad hybrid, you're gonna be horrible, and you're gonna just generate much more hate to you. So usually I find that people who are confident in themselves in real life usually translate in game. These people are confident in their spec, even though it's a wackadoodle spec, and their confidence is definitely found in large proportions, which doesn't necessarily mean all that large confidence is going to translate well into viability as a whole. That's a whole another matter in and of itself. So, as you can see, the type of character you choose actually does reflect more upon your in real life personality than you might have thought. And your reasoning for playing these classes might have more to do with how you actually view yourself than a simple fantasy game RPG. Once again, this is Vega King TV signing off. If you like my content, as usual, throw me a like, hit me with a subscription, and I look forward to hearing from you in the comments section. Take care.